Now this suspected serial killer is in custody, ending a 9-month trail of death.
I'm John Walsh. Those two great captures are what America's Most Wanted's all about, taking dangerous fugitives off the streets. We'll have details on those two captures later on in the hour. But first, a cop killer is on the loose. A sheriff in Colorado was gunned down on a lonely stretch of road in the early hours of November 18th. It happened in a part of the country where crime is rare. Fugitives are very hard to track. The town of Lake City, Colorado is perched almost 9,000 feet high in the Rockies on the Continental Divide. Main Street still has its saloons and historic churches, and there's only one bank in town. People here are honest and hardworking. Violence has rarely touched their lives. It was always something they read about in big cities.
Lake City has 400 people that live here in the wintertime right now, and we're a close family. It's like Cheers and Northern Exposure all wrapped into one. It's like a family. We have our fights and everything else, but it's kind of a family affair. We're here because of the peace and tranquility.
But that peace of mind was shattered just 2 weeks ago when history repeated itself in Lake City. It was more than 100 years ago in 1882 when the sheriff of this town was shot and killed. His name was Sheriff E.N. Campbell. Tragically, last month, another sheriff would become part of its history. Roger Coursey, the undersheriff, had been serving for 2 years. Just a few weeks ago, he won the sheriff's race in Lake City. He was respected as a law enforcement officer, cherished as a husband, and beloved as a grandfather to Trevor, a grandson whom he and his wife Karen were raising.
Roger and I were married for 15 years. There aren't enough adjectives to describe Roger. He was the kindest, most caring person I've ever known. He tried not to judge people, but tried to see good in everyone. He was so happy. He woke up with a smile. He went to sleep with a smile.
2 weeks ago, Roger, Karen, and their grandson Trevor went to bed as they did every evening. All was quiet in the sleepy hollow of Lake City. But 60 miles away across the Continental Divide in Creede, Colorado, trouble was brewing.
The call that we got was about 4:25 a.m. in the morning on Friday, November the 18th. The call said that there was an alarm gone off at the Lake City Creede Facility Bank, and I went ahead to investigate it. I walked over to the bank door, tried the door, and then I could see that the door had been tried to be pried open. They almost got in, but not quite.
The two suspects fled in a covered Ford pickup, headed across the mountain towards Lake City. The pickup was spotted. Sheriff Leggett called Sheriff Roger Coursey at home to tell him the suspects were headed his way.
As best I can recall, about 5:30 the phone rang, and they told him about the burglaries over in Creede and asked if he would go ahead and see if he couldn't deter them out here over Slumgullion. And I heard Roger saying, "No problem."
Sheriff Coursey called Ray Blom, the undersheriff. The two lawmen headed to Slum Curve to set up a roadblock.
So I got up and turned the radio on, and I heard Ray say, "Are you heading, what direction is that, south?" And Roger said yes. And then I heard him say, "Let's pull over here at the state yard." And I gathered then that they had pulled over in their individual vehicles. I heard Ray say, "There's some lights coming down over Slum." And Roger said, "Yeah, I see them."
Okay, we got out of our vehicles. Roger had called in the license plate before we stopped, and we moved forward. Roger went around to the left, to the driver's side. I went around to the right, to the passenger side. As we got to the front of the vehicle, I stood back and shined my light up into the passenger side, and I saw a woman sitting there. Gunnison Dispatch called and said, "Are you clear?"
Then I heard the Gunnison dispatcher call for Roger, and he didn't respond. And then Ray answered. And so the dispatcher said, "Can you copy?" And from my many years with Roger, I knew that that was a signal that there was something wrong.
He said, "The license plate is stolen." I then went back around the back of the vehicle and motioned for Roger to come back to me. He kept talking to the driver. I went on up and I touched him and I said, "Come back to me." I didn't say anything loud. I just motioned for him. He stepped back away. I said, "Roger, the license plate is stolen." I heard Roger tell the driver to get out of the vehicle, and then I heard a pop. And he said, "Ow," and the vehicle drove off, and I looked over and saw Roger laying on the ground. I then pointed my weapon at the vehicle and fired 15 rounds at it as it sped away.
The next thing I heard was Ray screaming, "Officer down!" And Ray was going frantic on the radio, and there was nobody responding. And he was screaming for an ambulance.
And I just watched him lay there, and he reached his left hand up towards the sky very slowly, and then very slowly let it back down again. Then his eyes just sort of fluttered, and I could see the life going out of him.
Emergency technicians hooked Corsi to a heart monitor and tried to save his life. His wife sped to the scene.
I got in there to him and put my arms around him. And told him I loved him. Colin told me that his heart just really jumped. And that he must have known I was there. And then it was all over.
Sheriff Corsi died at the scene, and the manhunt began. The first clue, the suspect's truck, was found abandoned later that night off the road on a ranch. The second clue, a camera with film in it found by deputies inside the front seat. After the film was developed, the deputies identified the photos, and the prints off the truck matched. The alleged triggerman was identified as 31-year-old Mark Allen Riedenberg. His accomplices, Ruth N. Slater. Both are wanted for first-degree murder of a policeman. The next day, more than 120 federal and local law enforcement officers came to find their fallen comrades' killers. They swept the entire county, but came up empty-handed. The suspect's trail had gone cold. Sheriff Roger Corsi was laid to rest the following Monday. His family, the townspeople of Lake City, and fellow officers from around the state bid their final farewell.
He loved the people. He loved the little town. The people loved him. Roger's Violators has taken the rest of my life from me. I feel like a shell because he was the best part of me. He's taken Trevor's role model.
We played a lot. We talked, we watched TV. We played games.
I'm mad that Trevor and I have to make it through all these things alone. They've taken the best law enforcement officer that ever walked.
Even in her heartbreak, Karen Corsi wants to thank everyone who helped in the search. The police officers, the townspeople, and the volunteers. But tonight, Karen's asking for your help to find the people who murdered her loving husband. Mark Allen Riedenberg favors Western-style dress, complete with cowboy boots. He has a fair complexion, so he keeps his red hair hidden under a hat. We don't have photos of them, but Riedenberg has Garfield the cat and the words L.A. Drifter tattooed on his upper left arm. And on his upper right arm, there's a tattoo of a rose with a ribbon. His accused accomplice, Ruth Slater, suffers from severe depression. She may be taking medicine for a chronic back problem. The robbery attempt occurred in Creede in southern Colorado. Authorities say the couple then drove northwest on Route 149 to Lake City. After the murder, they abandoned the truck and fled. A special alert to anyone who may have driven through this area on November 18th. Authorities believe the couple hitched a ride out of town. If you recognize Mark Allen Riedenberg or Ruth Slater, call our hotline at 1-800-CRIME-TV. And remember, you don't have to tell us your name. Now, Lake City is located here in southwestern Colorado. The nearest interstate is about 100 miles north. That's I-70, and it runs east and west. Remember, authorities believe the two were hitchhiking. So if you were in the area and may have seen them the weekend before Thanksgiving, or if you think you know anything at all about this case, please make that call. When we come back, thanks to some sharp police work, the most wanted man in America is behind bars. Stay with us. We called him the most wanted man in America. We aired his story 5 times. His picture was in newspapers and on wanted posters all across the country. The FBI labeled him a serial killer and put him at the top of their 10 most wanted list, accused of the brutal slayings of half a dozen men. Incredibly, Gary Ray Bowles evaded capture for more than 9 months. Our reporter Kate Sullivan has the story of how he was finally apprehended.
This is the picture we've been showing you of Gary Ray Bowles, and this is the way he looked just before his arrest. The difference was enough to keep a confessed serial killer on the loose. Police say he left a string of innocent victims in his wake all over the East Coast, from Daytona Beach to Silver Spring, Maryland, to Savannah, Georgia, to Atlanta. He targeted gay men, beating and killing them brutally. Then, after a murder in Hilliard, Florida on June 13th, his trail went cold. We now know he headed for Jacksonville Beach, Florida, creating a new identity using the name Tim. And amazingly, he managed to get away with it. Bowles got extremely lucky on July 25th, one of the times we aired his profile. Several of his roommates at a Jacksonville Beach rooming house recognized him and called police. But believe it or not, police looked at their photo, looked at Bowles, then decided they had the wrong man and let him go. Just days later, Bowles moved in with this man, Walter Hinton, a 47-year-old Jacksonville Beach florist. And even though Bowles had just had his close call with the law, police say that he couldn't stop his killing rage. Police believe Bowles brutally killed Hinton in his home November 16th and stole Hinton's Cadillac.
Police say, unlike the other killings, Bowles did not drive his victim's car out of state. In fact, they say, he continued life as if nothing had happened.
Bowles even lived in the trailer 2 more days, with Hinton's dead body in the back room.
I said, I want to go over there. I said, because something's wrong.
The victim's sister went to the trailer the day after Bowles left. She discovered the horrible scene, her brother dead, his mysterious roommate gone.
My brother took him in, and my brother was good to him. He fed him, he gave him a place to sleep, and I just want to know, why did he have to take my brother's life?
Gay called the police. They put out an alert with all the information they had. They were looking for a guy named Tim who worked odd jobs at a labor service and might be driving a stolen Cadillac. For one good cop at the Jacksonville Beach Police Department, it was all he needed.
What I did is I went down that morning to the labor pool to see if the guy that I knew that worked there had seen anybody driving a Cadillac.
Officer Cook was in luck. Labor Service Manager Dan Ballinger had not only seen the Cadillac, but he knew the Tim Officer Cook was looking for. It was Tim Whitfield. The very next day, Ballinger really came through for the police.
I pulled out my sign-in sheet and looked at it, and there was a Tim Whitfield on my sheet. I looked out, and he was sitting on the bench. So I go back. There's a police officer that comes here, and he had been looking for this Whitfield. We had his beeper number, and I beeped him, and I told him that Tim Whitfield was sitting out in our office to go to work. He says, I can't believe that.
The man called Tim Whitfield was taken into custody. No one knew yet that they were holding one of the FBI's top 10 fugitives. But when Officer J.P. Collins of the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office started questioning Whitfield, he got the surprise of his life.
And he asked me, "Do you want to know who I really am?" And I said, "Yes, I do. Tell me." And he said, "I am Gary Ray Bowles."
Finally, Bowles' crime spree was at an end. Police say he has confessed to 6 murders and is a suspect in 3 more.
It's just a feeling that's hard to describe, but if anybody that's in my position or as a police officer, a detective or what, and they are able to take someone off the street so they're not harming people anymore, that it's just a feeling that's really good.
Taking a confessed killer like Bowles off the streets helps us all breathe a little easier. He's being held in a Florida jail. Prosecutors will seek the death penalty. When we come back, the story of a woman who did everything a battered wife is supposed to do. But it was 2 stories. One special memory is her youngest child, Shelley. When Shelley fell in love with Michael McGuffey, Barbara wasn't thrilled with the smooth-talking Texan. By the time Shelley realized her mistake, it was already too late. Now, these photographs are all her mother has left.
I look at her pictures a lot. Every night before I go to bed, I stand and look at her pictures. Shelley was very innocent, just very naive. She had been sheltered, a real mama's girl, but she had a lot of friends. She was a real popular kid. She hadn't dated. You know, she didn't know a lot about guys. Shelley was close to 16 in these pictures. This was right around the time that she had met Mike in the summer of '83.
Get some Thunderbird.
Mike came to Anacortes to visit his biological father and his younger brother. Mike was 18. They spent a lot of time together with the crowd of kids that ran around together, and a relationship developed.
How's the prettiest girl here?
Cheryl and her brother invited us water skiing tomorrow.
I don't know about Cheryl. Let's skip it, huh?
She's my best friend. It'll hurt her feelings if I don't go.
Shelley, look. I'm going back to Texas soon, all right? I want to spend as much time with you as I possibly can. Just the 2 of us. Alone.
He was a flatterer. My daughter had fallen head over heels for him. She didn't realize that when he eliminated all of her friends, that was part of his controlling behavior. And he went back to Texas, left a broken-hearted girl behind. And then the following summer, he came back. And they picked up the relationship basically where they had left it off.
Look, I don't want to leave here without you again. I hated that last time. I want you to go with me when I go back.
To Texas?
Yeah.
Mike, all my family is here, my friends.
Shelley, you're mine. I want you with me all the time. I want us to go and get married.
Kids her age, they don't see beyond stars in their eyes, I guess. He left and she left with him. They got married on the 25th of December, 1985. When she turned 18, I just felt like it would either work or it wouldn't work, and she'd come home if it didn't work.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year! Damn, Mike. Swallow her up whole, why don't you?
I'm just jealous because you don't know how to treat a woman.
Drinks me just fine.
I don't need to be sticking my tongue down a throat every 2 seconds in public. Hey. All right. Some beer? I'm just kidding. Happy New Year.
Son of a bitch. Come on, we're leaving.
Mike, what's the matter?
His hand's all over you. You sure locked it.
It was just a friendly hug. Tom's your best friend. He didn't mean anything by it.
Mike, come on. It was nothing.
Their marriage was never without the control. Shelley had to let Mike know where she was. if she was going to be gone longer than she thought she would be, she had to leave a message on the message machine. And, I mean, it was like she didn't have a life of her own. Everything was controlled by Mike.
Hi.
What are you doing?
I'm going to the store.
You were thinking about leaving me, weren't you?
What? Mike, no. I'm just going to pick some things up for dinner. Don't be crazy.
What'd you say to me, huh? What'd you say?
Mike, don't. I didn't say anything.
What'd you say to me?
I didn't say anything.
Yeah, come on, I want to show you where you're going to end up if you ever leave me. You got that?
Mike, I wasn't going to leave you.
I want to show you something. Here we are. Here we are. Look, you see it? See it? Look. This is where you'll be if you ever leave me. You got that? Huh? Look.
She told me that Mike had taken her to the cemetery where his grandmother was buried.
You got 10 minutes to live. 10 minutes. You better ask for forgiveness. You ask for forgiveness. All right. You're forgiven. This time. But we're going to go back to that apartment, and you're not going to leave. Not unless I say. You got that? Good. Good.
She said all she did was cry because she really thought that he was going to kill her then. She didn't know what she was supposed to ask forgiveness for. It was a real scary situation, real scary, because at one point I thought I was going to have to go to Texas and get her. I didn't think Mike would shoot me. Maybe he would have, but that was my daughter. Alicia was born the 5th of January of 1989. She loved that little girl. He had moved to Lafayette, Indiana by then. Shelley was totally isolated. She had no friends. She had no vehicle. Exactly the way Mike wanted it.
I know you aren't going out with your friends. What do you think, I'm stupid? What's his name, huh? What's his name?
I think it was in October of '92 that he beat her up pretty bad in front of Alicia.
Stand up when I'm talking to you. What's his name, huh? Talk to me.
I'm gonna go with some friends, that's all.
Oh, you think I'm supposed to believe that? Huh? You're not going anywhere. My wife is going to get what I paid for. Come on. Come on.
No.
She contacted a shelter for battered women. They helped her fill out divorce papers, and she left him on the 2nd of February.
Okay, honey, be careful.
By February 1993, Shelley moved into an apartment in her mother's building. She was taking every precaution a battered woman could. And for the first time, she felt safe. She was starting a new life, a life without Mike McGuffey. But McGuffey refused to let her go.
One night he called her after she'd gotten her own apartment, and he told her that he did not believe in God anymore, and that he had made a pact with Satan and had sold his soul to him. And when she told me that, I said, you know, that's really scary. Really is scary. That's scary to me.
September 22nd, 1993.
Approximately a month after her divorce was final, I went up to her apartment just to spend some time with her. She had to work that day.
Okay. We have to do it on the kitchen table, all right?
She was really a beautiful girl. I remember standing there and thinking, you know, how pretty she was.
I gotta get going. I'm gonna be late.
And I never dreamed when she walked out the door that that's the last time that I would ever see her. I didn't know that she was going to meet him that day to fill out income tax papers.
Shelley, come on. Open the door.
I told you we'd meet inside the restaurant.
Shelley, come on. I'm not going to hurt you. Your friends are right over there. Open the door.
Go inside and I'll meet you in there.
Look, I'm not going to hurt you. Please, sweetheart.
Let's just go inside the restaurant.
What the hell are you doing? You think this is the end of the story? This isn't the end of this, you know. The divorce is not final. You're seeing someone else. I know you are. Huh?
reality, I know that she's dead, but it doesn't. My heart doesn't want to accept that. Alicia and I have some days that are really hard. I cut Mike out of these 2 pictures. I don't know. I wish I could have cut him out of her life.
And let's not forget about little 5-year-old Alicia. She still has horrible nightmares about her father's abusiveness. Barbara and Alicia live each day with the fear that McGuffey will come back. So let's make sure that this time when he does, it's in handcuffs. An electrician by trade, McGuffey has used the alias Michael Yoakum. When he's not working, McGuffey's probably at the gym, works out with weights, and is proud of his physique, showing it off with tight clothes. And he usually wears a thick gold chain necklace and a diamond stud in his left ear. McGuffey considers himself quite the ladies' man and has a thick Texas accent. But don't fall for his phony Southern charm. If you know where Michael Lee McGuffey is tonight, call our hotline. The number is 1-800-CRIME-TV. That's 1-800-274-6388. When we come back, your tips bring in capture number 326. Stay with us.
Join Q13 Kids Club hosts Elise, Nina, and Art.
Over the next few weeks, you'll be hearing a lot of talk about DNA. Now that's because O.J. Simpson's attorneys will be fighting to keep the DNA evidence out of the trial. DNA testing is controversial. Proponents say that DNA evidence could positively place a suspect at the scene of the crime. But just how reliable is DNA testing?
If we are deprived of any portion of this sample for our own independent analysis, that we are deprived of due process.
DNA is one of the most controversial aspects of the highest profile murder trial of the century. One of the centers of that controversy is Cellmark Diagnostic Laboratory in Germantown, Maryland. Cellmark is conducting DNA tests on evidence found at the scene of the murders of Nicole Simpson and Ronald Goldman. Mark Stolero, Chief of Operations at Cellmark, won't divulge any results or even discuss the case, but he is a staunch defender of this new science.
This is a tool which is capable of discriminating individuality at a level which, until DNA testing, was simply not available.
There are many who don't have such faith in DNA testing.
Mr. Simpson's conviction or acquittal will rise or fall, I assure you, on something other than DNA testing.
Ronald Goodbread serves on a national task force on DNA testing, a group chaired by 2 of Simpson's lawyers. They're ready to challenge the accuracy of DNA tests.
It's not a unique identifier. It cannot, at least in the manner in which it is being propounded, identify one person as against all the world.
Not guilty.
But that's what the prosecutors in Los Angeles have in mind. They claim that DNA test results place O.J. Simpson at the scene of the murders because drops of blood found at the crime scene appear to match Simpson's DNA pattern. As for the defense, they'll look for other explanations.
A match not necessarily means somebody's guilty for the crime. A match only says the person's DNA appear at the crime scene. There may be legitimate explanation of somebody's DNA appearing in the crime scene.
Dr. Henry Lee usually works for the prosecution as the chief criminologist in Connecticut, but he's also signed on as a DNA expert for Simpson.
If a case so clear-cut, a person was involved, I usually, defense, if contact me, I usually decline. If a case have a reasonable doubt, I do consider.
Here's how scientists link a tiny bit of DNA with a person. Evidence provides blood, semen, hair, or even saliva samples. Similar samples are taken from the suspect and the victim. In the laboratory, chemicals remove the DNA from the evidence. Nearly every human cell contains DNA, a double-stranded molecule. DNA provides the code which determines our individuality. Only identical twins have the same DNA. Enzymes wash the DNA, cutting it into fragments. Fragments are placed in a gel where an electrical current causes them to separate and line up by size. Radioactive probes permit technicians to take an X-ray of the pattern so we can see it. The end result is called an autoradiograph, which is examined in search of a match.
We have an autoradiograph from a typical case that was a homicide case. In this particular case, this is DNA which was taken from the defendant in the case. In the lane which is to the left of it, that's DNA which was taken from the victim. The defendant claimed that the blood stains removed from his clothing, which were in these 3 lanes, came from his own blood. It's quite evident that these patterns do not match that of the defendant, and this constitutes a match between the DNA from these samples from the defendant's clothing and the DNA from the victim. It is the appearance of an autoradiograph before a jury which allows them to see very, very clearly, with no experience in the laboratory at all, which samples clearly match and which samples do not. So despite the complexities in the laboratory, the end product is something which is very easily observed and the results of which can be very compelling.
Prosecutor Arthur Karp knows firsthand how compelling DNA evidence can be. It was a critical part of his case against Timothy Spencer in 1988.
Timothy Spencer was one of those very rare people about whom you could say if he was out on the street, there was going to be another dead woman probably within 2 weeks and certainly within a month.
Timothy Spencer was in trouble with the law most of his life. He'd served time for several burglaries. Then in 1987, he was released to a halfway house in Richmond. In the next 3 months, 4 Virginia women were brutally raped and murdered. In each case, Spencer was in the area without an alibi. Still, the evidence against him was scanty and circumstantial.
We wouldn't have been able to take the case to trial, much less get a conviction. All we had was that the pattern of Timothy Spencer being out on the street matched the pattern of the killing.
Then prosecutors turned to a very new forensic tool, DNA testing, and they struck gold. Virginia's chief forensic scientist says the Spencer case became a landmark.
Power of the DNA methodology was probably first established in this country in that case.
Prosecutors put the chances against Spencer being the rapist at just 1 in 135 million. The DNA evidence was so convincing that Timothy Spencer received 4 death sentences, and in April he became the first person executed largely on the basis of DNA tests.
And once that I heard that a person had been sentenced to die by using DNA evidence, I just decided that this is my ticket.
Tony Snyder was serving 45 years for rape when Spencer was sentenced.
I was accused of raping a neighbor, someone that lived across the street.
He had never been in trouble. We had never had a lawyer. We'd never been in a courtroom, so I didn't know where to start.
Tony asked his mom to find out about DNA tests. Edith and Tyrone Snyder took out a second mortgage on their house, raising $65,000 for lawyers' fees and tests. Edith worked nights so she could care for Tony's son Terrell during the day. It took 6 years before she saw confirmation of what she knew all along. Her son was not the rapist.
December the 18th, this was just before Christmas, and I found out my son was innocent. So I was happy. This was the greatest day of my life, seemed like it.
The DNA to me is a lifesaver. It saved my life. It saved my life.
Tony was freed on April 23, 1993.
I feel good. I feel happy.
He had spent nearly 7 years behind bars. Despite the general acceptance of DNA tests in 45 states, there are many arguments raised against it. Arguments the Simpson team may use in the coming weeks. Were the samples collected, preserved, and labeled properly? Were the tests done accurately? Were the technicians qualified? Some argue that a complete lack of federal regulations casts a shadow on DNA tests.
Until we have a standard by which we can measure DNA testing, for example, the way we do with hair and fiber testing, the way we do with the actual fingerprint testing, then the science cannot be presented as a unified, objective, verifiable, and reliable science.
Those who run the labs are ready to defend them.
The technology is capable of an exceptionally high degree of reliability and accuracy, and has been established as such in Virginia over the last 5 years. We've been using this particular technology. Very effective, very reliable.
Simpson's attorneys will dispute the procedure and the way evidence was gathered. You can expect a fiery debate over whether statistics support a true DNA match.
The best that any of these tests can do is to say that Mr. Simpson is among thousands, perhaps scores of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of other human beings in this country who might have the same DNA profile.
No matter the odds, nearly all experts agree that DNA test results should only be one part of the total evidence in any case.
It is not and should not be looked at as a smoking gun or a silver bullet. It is a very powerful piece of information, but it has to be taken in the context of all the other facts surrounding an investigation.
So how accurate is DNA testing? Well, no one agrees. Proponents say that